In this video, I combine tutorials for 11 double increases. Double increase means that 2 new stitches are added. There are 4 pairs of true double increases when they are worked from 1 stitch. There are 3 of semi-true double increases when they are worked from 2 stitches. There are also 5 pairs of false increases, which are incorrectly called center double increases. They are actually paired single increases. For written instructions, please see the link below. Here, 3 semi-true double increases are shown at the bottom, and 4 true double increases are shown above. Those increases are made out of 2 stitches, from one current stitch and from previous stitch, which is the stitch in row below. Number 1. The current stitch worked twice with the stitch below in between. Knit the current stitch, the stitch on the needle. Don't drop it off the needle. Then knit into the center of the previous stitch, the stitch below our stitch. Now knit the current stitch again and drop it off the needle. This symmetrical variation has a round hole under the increased stitches. Here is how it looks after few rows. Knit side and purl side. Number 2. The current stitch is worked only once, between 2 lifted increases, which are worked into the right and left legs of the stitch below. Pick up the right leg of the previous stitch and knit it. Now knit the current stitch and drop it off the needle. Pick up the left leg of the previous stitch and knit it. This symmetrical variation has a smaller triangular shape hole under the increased stitches. Here is how it looks after few rows. Knit side and purl side. Number 3 is the same as number 2, but with one change. Pick up the right leg of the previous stitch and knit it. Now knit the current stitch, but not as usual. Knit it through the back loop and drop it off the needle. Pick up the left leg of the previous stitch and knit it. Because the central stitch is twisted, there is no hole under the increased stitches. Very useful. Here is how it looks after a few rows. Knit side and purl side. Double increases are often used for raglans and chevron stitch patterns. Let's see how these 3 increases look when stacked one over another. The first double increase variation creates a line of slightly knotty stitches. This is not very common type. The second creates a vertical line of accurate narrow holes This is a very popular increase. And the third, because the central stitch is twisted, there are no holes at all. A pretty spectacular increase. The next 8 double increases are true double increases, when 3 stitches are made at once from only one stitch. 3 existing increases and 1 newly invented. Each out of 4 increases has an interesting variation. So, here are 8 true double increases. Number 1 is often called CDI, central double increase. Knit through the back loop. Don't drop the stitch from the needle. Knit into the front of the loop. And now drop the stitch off. Pick up the vertical strand between 2 newly created stitches and knit it through the back. This increase creates a small knot in the center. It is not absolutely symmetrical because the base stitch is twisted, but this reduces the hole. Here is how it looks after a few rows. On knit side, the small knot under the central stitch. And purl side. Number 2 is a very similar increase to CDI. First, knit in front of the stitch, then knit into the back of the stitch and drop it off. Pick up the left leg of the current stitch and knit it. It also has a small knot under the central stitch and a hole underneath. Here is how it looks after few rows. It is a pretty symmetrical increase on the knit side and purl side. Here are 2 variations of central double increase side by side to compare. The first has a twisted stitch under the increase. Next is simple double increase. Work 3 stitches in the same base stitch. Knit 1, purl 1, and knit again. Now drop it off the needle. The result is a knotty horizontal bar and a very big hole. This symmetrical increase can be used in lace patterns to add some structure. Fourth is a variation of previous increase. Work 3 stitches in the same base stitch. Purl 1, knit 1, and purl 1. Drop the stitch off the needle. Compare these 2 double increase variations. The next one is very popular yarn over double increase. Knit the stitch, make a yarn over, and knit the stitch again. Drop it off the needle. This symmetrical increase is very easy to do, and it results in an accurate hole. It is widely used for lace patterns and vertically stacked increases. Yarn over double increase has a variation called pothole eyelet. To work it, knit the first and the last stitch not into the current stitch, but into the previous stitch. So knit the first stitch in the row below, make yarn over, and knit again into the row below. Drop the current stitch off the needle. Compare yarn over double increase and pothole eyelet. The latter, on the left, has a much bigger hole underneath. This is single increase to increase, to make 2 stitches from 1 stitch. After some experiments with it, I discovered that it is possible to make 3 stitches from 1 stitch using the 2 increase technique. I called it T increase because it has T shape. In preparatory row, we create an elongated stitch by working a double wrap. Slip the double wrapped stitch purlwise. Wind long loop around the left needle from front to back. Work first knit stitch from this position and drop the first loop of the left needle. Knit the second stitch by working it through the back loop. Work the third knit stitch, inserting right needle into the loop as usual. And now off the needle. It is important to mention that T increase can be made immediately, without preparatory row, out of a normal length stitch. But in this case, the stitch itself and its neighbors will become very tight and small. Please watch how to work both knit and purl variations of T increase in separate detailed video. The link is below. Here are 2 T increases made from normal stitch and elongated stitch. Here is how it looks after few rows. 3 identical stitches positioned in one line and 2 tiny holes on both sides of the base stitch. It is an absolutely symmetrical double increase, results in flat fabric and can be used in many patterns, especially for raglan lines. On this chevron sample, you can see all 4 true double increases stacked vertically. The first column is made out of CDI, central double increases. The second out of simple knit, purl, knit double increases. The third is yarn over double increase, often used for raglans worked top down. The fourth column is T increase, a new double increase. For new T increase, I made a raglan sample as well. As you can see, T increase creates a very even vertical line. The fabric is flat, without any knots and only with tiny holes. It will be perfect for raglan sweaters worked from top down. I would like to show chevron samples of false double increases, which are sometimes incorrectly called centered double increases. These are actually paired single increases, positioned on each side of the one central stitch. They are all single increases. They can be made in many different ways, in any place, alone or paired, with one stitch or with two or more stitches between them. Therefore, they are not actually double increases made in one stitch. In this sample, I combined 10 variations. 5 worked as raised at the bottom and 5 worked from the yarn overs, top. The bottom variations are very tight, while the top yarn overs increases are more loose. The first one, yarn over, knit, yarn over. All yarn overs or strands are worked open. The holes give a lacy look to the line. The second, here the strands or yarn overs are twisted in opposite direction. A small zigzags are appeared on both sides of the central stitch, and you can see how the strands are twisted to the left and to the right. Then third column, the same strands are twisted to the right and to the left. Here, the reverse order of twists creates a raised central stitch. On the second column, zigzaggy look around central stitch, and on the third column, the central stitch is raised. Two last lines are variations of the third line, where the central stitch is worked differently. In the fourth, by knitting through the back loop, the central stitch became a narrow cord. And in fifth, by slipping the central stitch, an even chain of elongated stitches emerges.